Welcome to the Why Factor, a chance to work out why we do what we do. BBC World Service podcasts are supported by advertising.
Thanks for downloading this edition of The Why Factor from the BBC, a programme that seeks to find out why we do the things we do. I hope you enjoy it. BBC World Service. I'm Mike Williams with The Why Factor. Today, the history, psychology, the uses and abuses of the suit.
The man's three-piece suit, you can say exactly when it came to England, the 8th of October 1666.
In the 18th century, it was perfectly appropriate and masculine for an elite man to wear a pink silk suit with embroidery of flowers and lace.
I wear a suit every day, even at the weekend. But I always dress it up or dress it down.
Hello. Simon, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So you're here today at Henry Poole and Company, 15 Savile Row, here in London. My name is Simon Cundy.
The company dates back to 1806. In the century or so that followed, 400 million people were added to the British Empire, an empire that came to dominate world trade. Perhaps because of Britain's global power, British fashion became a global phenomenon, and the sombre suit became an international norm.
The legend has it that James Poole was selling the cloths for the Battle of Waterloo years. His son, ironically, got to know Napoleon III, who was obviously presiding after his great-uncle, and actually met with him, and then soon after, Edward VII. Now, having those two kingpins of dandyism back in the day, they very much were the inventors of many designs, such as the turn-ups and the dinner suits. In fact, Henry Poole designed the dinner suit with Edward VII back in 1860. So anyone who had to meet his mother, Queen Victoria, had to be dressed by Henry Poole. But then that led to Tsar of Russia, Khedive of Egypt, Maharaj of Jaipur, Crown Prince of Japan, Bismarck. I mean, there's countless families and tentacles that go out throughout the world. So we are very much a global company, still are today.
The business suit is a kind of international look. It looks modern, but it also looks somewhat not fashionable. It looks like a uniform.
Valerie Steele is director of the museum at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York.
In its basic form, it's existed since the 17th century, and in its kind of contemporary form since the beginning of the 20th century. So it's kind of remarkable to think of this look remaining essentially constant and spreading throughout the world among men in the elite, and then also ordinary men, and then eventually also women adopting variants of the business suit.
Why do you think it has this power? Why do you think it's spread so far?
I think because it connotes modernity. I think that it looks modern, it looks efficient. Some would say it is functional. I think it's more a question of it carries connotations of modernity and functionalism and status.
My name is Martin Pell. I'm curator of fashion at the Royal Pavilion and Museums in Brighton on the south coast of England. The man's three-piece suit, you can say exactly when it came to England, for the 8th of October 1666. Samuel Pepys's diary, he talks about when Charles II, the king at the time, introduced what was a brand new item of clothing into English wardrobe. He says,
"The King has yesterday in council declared his resolution of setting a fashion for clothes which he will never alter. It will be a vest, I know not how, but it is to teach the nobility thrift, and will do good."
And this is really the introduction of the three-piece suit into English fashion, and then it just sort of gradually developed into a much more what we recognise as suit today. So instead of being made of silk, it was made of wool, and it became much more sombre.
And then came this thing called the Great Masculine Renunciation, a great title. Explain what that was.
The primary function of men's dress around 1800, when we have this great masculine renunciation, is to show their sobriety and to show that they are business people rather than the elite. It was a leveller, and I think it was a way of everyone looking the same.
In the 18th century, it was perfectly appropriate and masculine for an elite man to wear a pink silk suit with embroidery of flowers and lace. By the middle of the 19th century, though, the suit had become quite dark, usually black, made out of wool broadcloth, so much more sober and undecorated look. The reasons for this are complex, but in the short, oversimplified reason is with the growth of democratization and capitalism, this more businesslike uniform came into style for men.
It's in a grey bird's eye cut on Edwardian lines with a centre-slit coat. Waistcoat with 4 holes and buttons and slip collar. The trousers have no turn-ups and raised seams. And this time it's not utility but fashion. So there it is, the best suit of the year, and here's the trophy to prove it.
And then with the so-called peacock revolution of the 1960s, color and decoration began to re-enter menswear. And so now, of course, it is possible to find suits which are colorful and decorative, but they are definitely still in the minority.
I'm Sir Paul Smith, I'm a clothes designer, and here we are in my studio in Covent Garden, London.
Do you always wear suits?
Yeah, I wear a suit every day, even at the weekend. I just find them really work for me, but I always dress it up or dress it down.
You gotta look sharp. You gotta look sharp.
The suit men were businessmen, and suits in young people's minds were a funeral, a job interview, or getting married. And Mr. Armani from Italy and me, in a lot more humble way, we did something to the suit which hadn't been done, well, ever, really, which was change the way it was built. Soften the suit up, soften the shoulder pads, made the suit more easy to wear, because a lot of people were coming out of wearing a denim jacket with a zip up the front or a more casual item, and suddenly they put our suits on. And 79, I opened my little shop in Covent Garden, and young guys would come in and see these suits hanging there. And the first thing was there'd be classical looking fabrics like a chalk stripe, but instead of having a white stripe, we might have a lemon stripe and whatever. So everyone was like, wow, this is quite interesting.
So we're now into the large workshops here. We have about sort of 16 people here working away.
The Maharaja of Cooch Behar came to be dressed here at Henry Poole and Company, Emperor Akihito of Japan too, and the last emperor of Brazil, Dom Pedro II, Emperor Haile Selassie from Ethiopia, Sir Winston Churchill from closer to home, King Leopold II of the Belgians, the Butcher of the Congo, all them and many more luminaries from the 19th, 20th and 21st centuries.
Well, you're standing in a room which... right here is a few Lord Lieutenant's uniforms. We've got a lovely horse here which you can actually sit on when you're trying on your riding jacket. And
you haven't actually got a horse. You have a wooden saddle.
A wooden saddle here, but we still use that today when we are fitting the riding coat to be exactly at the right length. And then you'll get other suits such as tails for dinner wear. You've got Ascot, Chelsea Flower Show, we move on to Henley, we've got Glyndebourne, all these great events, Wimbledon. So we address the world that come over to see these events.
That all sounds rather elitist. Is the suit now an elitist thing?
Not at all. It's a functional piece. Gentlemen still feel very relaxed and reassured and happy to be in something that fits them. And a lot of people in our world are very business orientated, don't have much time to go traipsing around from shop to shop trying to find something that fits. It does cost. But if you take the cost of it over 10 years, which generally that's what they should last, there's a reasonable factor in price.
And how much do they cost?
Well, they are running around $3,500 plus VAT.
$6,000?
About just over the 5 mark.
$5,300 for a suit. Chairman Mao would not have approved. China's Cultural Revolution began in 1966, a brutal attempt by Mao Zedong to forge a new type of country. He worried about military machines and political machinations, but like other authoritarian rulers, he also got down into the details of people's daily lives, what they could read and see and say, even what they could wear.
We call it the Mao suit in the West, but the Chinese refer to it as the Sun Yat-sen uniform, or just the uniform, because it really started in the early 20th century with the first great nationalist revolutionary leader, Dr. Sun Yat-sen. Now, he did not invent the suit, which consists of a tunic and trousers, but he adapted it, and it was primarily taken from 19 teens, so it was a hybrid mixture of Chinese and Western clothing. And then when Mao came to power, it was adjusted slightly again with a little bit more of the peasant feeling to it. Came in essentially 3 colors: blue for peasants and workers, gray for cadres, communist officials, and green for members of the People's Liberation Army.
We were wearing something that is largely blue. It's like a uniform, very little variation, and that's also called the Mao suit.
The writer Yung Chang, author of Wild Swans and of a biography of Mao.
Nobody gives an order, says this is compulsory. But in those days, you could only get what you got in the shops. And the shops were only selling these uniform-like things typically with baggy trousers. So we had to wear those.
What did it feel like to wear it?
Functional, and it's comfortable. I think that was the point. This would cost the state the minimum of money because Mao wanted to cut down all consuming, but focus the resources of the country for his military industries.
The purpose of the uniforms was to focus on the group, to make sure that everybody looked and acted like members of the group. By the time you get the Cultural Revolution, it was effectively compulsory. There were gangs of youths wandering around, attacking people who were wearing bourgeois fashions. So it became pretty much necessary to wear the uniform.
This is what we call the fitting room. The angle of the mirrors are put so we can actually walk around you, therefore we can actually get the fitting absolutely perfect.
Let me just move into position
Yeah.
here. So it's rather embarrassing, actually, because it's a very cold London day, so I have my jeans on, a big pair of boots, and a big woolly jumper. I feel very, very ill-dressed here.
What's the suit for? What's the purpose of it?
I think it's a meet and a greet, and if you're on business, I still think gentlemen feel more reassured that if you're going to invest in something or meet and discuss a project together, it's a sort of remark of respect that you make the effort to take something serious in life.
There is a sense if you're wearing the suit, it disappears. There's nothing conspicuous about you. You're just dressed appropriately. And I think that is very important. The historian Anne Hollander also suggests that one reason for the longevity of the suit is that it subtly idealizes the body, so that through padding in the shoulder, adjusting the proportions, you can create a facsimile of a good-looking body while also just generally veiling less good-looking bodies.
I could do with a suit like that myself, I think.
The suit is a form of authority, being taken seriously. I always think if you got onto an aeroplane and the captain was standing there in a sweatshirt with a baseball cap on back to front and a pair of shorts, with all the qualifications to fly you across the Atlantic, would you take him seriously? You'd probably think, I'll just go back home now, thank you. But because he's in the navy blue suit with the little gold bits on the shoulder, suddenly you're at ease with his qualifications and his skill. I worked a lot with Led Zeppelin, with Pink Floyd, with the Stones, with the Beatles, and then later on with people like Talking Heads, Brian Ferry, and then a lot with David Bowie. And what we did, though, it was a suit, but it wasn't a suit like the regular businessman would wear. So if you remember the famous album with the black and white houndstooth check suit with Bowie, I think he's holding a saxophone. So it's got a very strong padded shoulder, it's got a very short jacket, wide trouser. So in real terms it's a suit, but there's suits and suits and suits, and that was a suit that had a particular style. The 70s is when young British boys and girls were expressing themselves, but not in a non-violent way. So there was the punks, there was the new romantics, there was the goths, there was the mods, and that was all self-expression through clothes. fact, you know, you go across the channel to Paris in 68, was it? They were burning cars and you know, it was political and it was a lot more aggressive. So I think that it was quite nice, the fact that we were expressing ourselves, which included suits, be different to our elder brothers and establishment.
There is, though, a standard suit, isn't there? We all understand that there is this dark suit worn with a white shirt, a light shirt, a blue shirt, a tie, and that's the uniform of business. Why?
I think the suit says absolutely that whoever wears it is not too concerned about looking flashy. They're not too concerned about making a bold statement about themselves in the sense of their personality, but they're making a statement about who they are and what they want to achieve. So you see women adopting the suit in the 1940s at a time of war, and it was utility, and it was saying, let's get on with what needs to be done. Men were at war, so women adopted the suit. They didn't wear trousers, they wore skirts. So it was women getting on with business. It's a utilitarian garment, but it is able to be so much more, or just a utilitarian garment.
The 70s was the era of the women's liberation movement. There are a number of anecdotes, for example, of a woman wearing a trouser suit to a very exclusive restaurant in New York and being refused admittance. So she went in the ladies' room and took off the trousers and came back in just wearing the jacket, calling it a mini dress, and being allowed in.
Today, no one would blink at a woman in a business suit in New York City, or a Chinese politician in a suit for that matter. It's a common uniform from Tehran to Tokyo, from Boston to Bahrain and beyond.
It's a great leveller, and you can just get on with business rather than having to consider the wearer's background, where they come from. And I think that's why it was a huge success, or the three-piece suit has stayed with us since the 1800s, because you've got the rise of the middle class and the rise of the urban elite, and people didn't really know where other people came from. To wear a three-piece suit, you did away with your past, if you like. So in a way, I suppose it is a disguise, and you were just dealing with that day's business, which is why it's been so successful all the way through to today.
You could be 13 or 100 or a rock star or a schoolboy, you know, there'll always be a place for the suit.
I don't think the suit will probably ever die. I think it's such a great piece of design. Whether we wear it every day or whether we wear it on occasions, I don't think it's ever going to go away.
Thanks for listening to The Y Factor. If you'd like to hear more episodes, there's a wide range of programmes on our website. We're looking inside the wardrobe for a while. Last week, the T-shirt. Today, you heard the hidden history of the suit. And coming up, we'll find unexpected meaning in skirts and the necktie. Visit bbcworldservice.com/Y Factor.